Greetings from the Bavarian Oberland. In this video I want to give some insights into the multiplayer online game Tale of Toast. It has a cute anime-like design and a rather casual gameplay. However, it does have complex mechanics and a very sophisticated crafting system. I am splitting this guide in two parts and I'm starting the first part very basic, so this might also be useful if you just want to see what this game is about. Therefore, I'll add a linked table of contents into the video description. So, if you click View More below the video, you can jump right to the topics that interest you.
First, some basic information.
Tale of Toast is available over Steam, and I will also put all the links into the video description below. In case you're not familiar, Steam is a gaming platform, so you will need a Steam account and have to install the Steam client first. However, Steam and the game itself are for free. There is also a very helpful Discord forum, and I highly recommend this to talk about the game or to ask for help. And finally, there is a wiki that contains a lot of detailed information.
The first steps into the game.
I'm in the game now, and as you can see, you can create up to 3 characters. So, enter a name and then you can adjust the styling. Just take your time to design a nice character. If you're unhappy later on, you can still redesign your character over a button in your inventory. So here I am. There are 2 different ways you can move around. You can use your WASD keys, or you can click the ground. Now one thing I noticed, when you click the ground to run, then the camera doesn't stay behind you. That's a feature that I expected, so in case you want to activate this, you can do so in the menu, click Escape, and then in the options, under Controls, you can activate this feature, Always Stay Behind Player. Now you see the camera follows my character. So at this point, what does the game want me to do? It says I should report to Officer Durham. So let's go look for him. You see, in close quarters it's often easier to use your keys, while if you run a longer distance you can click the ground and then with the right mouse button pressed you can look around and also scroll in and out with your mouse wheel. This is Officer Durham, who will give him my first quest. So I'm making a cut here. So I got my first quest. I am to report at an officer in Brightwin, and let's have a look at the map where that is. Press M to open your map. Then you can see that I spawned east of a town called Brightwin, and this will also be your first area of action in the first levels of the game. So let's go there. You don't have to do the quests, but they're entertaining, particularly in the beginning. Later on, the game is more about developing a character and exploring the map as you slowly level up. You can play alone or in groups, and in higher levels, if you like, you can also do some complex player versus player combat. And back there is the character that I should meet. Brightwin has 2 major places. Up here you can see the general goods store and a few features back there, and then the lower marketplace where all the crafting happens. Also, there's an important character there, the trader. Okay, so at this point let's have a closer look at the user interface. Of course you have a mini-map, and I recommend to scroll out as far as possible to get a better view of the surrounding. This button here activates the portal, which beams you back to your home. So this is a very useful feature if you're far out in the woods and you just want to get back, or if you fall down somewhere and can't get out, you can use this beaming mechanism. And later on in the game you can also set it to other cities than Brightwin. This control here activates player versus player combat. So this is important. You're currently safe from other players, so other players cannot attack you. and I strongly recommend that you leave it that way until you are more familiar with the game. Down here you have a menu button, and you can enter all dialogues over this menu or over the associated short keys. Like to view your quests, you can press H or open it here. Then you can see what my current quest status is. And down here is the toolbar. It has 10 slots and is used to bind equipment like weapons and magical potions, so that you can access them quickly in the game. To do this, open your inventory by pressing B. Now this shows you which items you are currently carrying around and which items you're actually wearing. So this up here is your character, and I can equip it, for example, with this bow that I have by dropping it into his right hand, his weapons hand. However, it's much quicker if you do this over the toolbar. So I just drop these items that I have into my toolbar. And now I can equip them by using the corresponding keys. So if I press 3, my character uses the bow. If I press 1, the character uses the wand, and so on. And you can also use it for magical spells and whatever you want to activate quickly. Now there's one more important place here, and that's the bank. You can use the bank to store items that you don't want to carry around. So let's speak to the banker, and you can see I can just move items back and forth. And of course you can also just right click them.
Watch your back.
At this point I have no gold yet, so before I can do any trading, I'll get myself some loot drops. You'll find all kinds of creatures right outside Brightwin. However, close to the town they're not aggressive. Aggressive creatures will attack you when you get too close and you are in the line of sight. By default you attack automatically. This can be toggled with this button or by pressing V. Now, if I hover over my weapon, then you see it has a range of 10 meters. So when I right click onto an enemy, you see the distance displayed up here and his health bar. Now all I do is walk within my weapon's range and then it will automatically attack him. And so I'll have to get myself a few monsters, and hopefully they'll drop something that is useful for me. Okay, there's something. In order to pick up loot, you can just right click it. It says bunny tooth and it has a worth of 2 gold. So I'll come back to the fighting mechanics in a moment. At this point I have only 2 more hints. First, you can press the X key to sit down and replenish your health more quickly. And then I have another recommendation for your settings. If I open the options, then in the controls, you can change the key bindings. And there is a key to pick up the nearest loot automatically. Loot nearby item. I bound it to the key that is directly above the key that I use for running forward, so that I can hit it quickly and just pick up everything around me.
More about the fighting mechanics.
Now, to be more specific, there are 3 different types of combat, depending on what weapons you use. First, you have classic melee, when you use weapons like daggers or maces. You have the choice between 2-handed weapons, which are stronger, or 1-handed weapons that allow you to use a shield. Then there's ranged combat when you use a bow. The range can be up to 20 meters depending on the bow, and note that bows are always 2-handed. By the way, you can craft arrows, but they're only optional and increase your damage a bit, so I wouldn't care to use them. Then finally there's magic, which has a range of 10 meters. You need either a staff, which is 2-handed, or a wand, which again is 1-handed and can be used with a shield.
Stats and skills.
This is really where you develop your character. You see, there are no fixed classes in the game. Instead, it depends on what equipment you use and how you distribute your points. So, press L to open your stats. Each time you level up, you gain additional points that you can distribute. Vitality increases your health pool. Strength increases the damage you do in melee fighting. Defense increases the damage reduction. However, I recommend to use Vitality rather than Defense, at least in the lower levels of the game. Wisdom is basically the same as Defense, but for magic damage. Dexterity increases your damage output with ranged weapons. And Magic increases your magic damage and also the amount of mana that you have, your mana bar. I'll explain that in a moment. So, I have 2 points and I'll distribute them on Vitality and Magic. Then press K to open your skills. Skills are special abilities and bonuses that you get. There are different types of skills for the various combat types, and they are also tied to having certain equipment. Just a few examples. Firebolt is very useful to deal extra damage. Hemorrhage is similar for ranged weapons. And Ice Bolt is very useful to start an engagement because it has a large range and slows the enemy down. Finally, Shield Bash is very useful because it stuns an enemy. So at this point I'll select 2 skills. Do a lot of testing here. Until you reach level 10 you can reset for free. Note that there are passive skills, that means they automatically take effect. And there are active skills that must be manually activated during combat. To do this, drag them into slots of your toolbar. This way you can activate them in a combat by pressing the corresponding keys. So, I'll right click an enemy and note that I'm still outside of my normal magic damage range. I use Fireball first and then Shield Bash. Notice that some skills require a channeling time, that means you have to stand still before they get active. Also, my mana points have been reduced, so this is basically your ability to use active skills.
Crafting. The basics.
As I have already mentioned, Tale of Toast has a strong focus on crafting. So I highly recommend that you give it a try once you have become familiar with the game. First you need a set of tools. The idea is that I buy the first set of tools from the trader and then use this to build more efficient tools later on.
Greetings!
So if you right-click items in your inventory, you sell them, and if you right-click items in his inventory, you buy them. I'll start with metal and woodworking. So I'll buy a pickaxe, a hatchet, a cross-pane hammer and a saw. When you view a deposit like this copper ore, you see which tool is required. You don't have to equip tools manually. If you right-click a deposit twice and you have the right tool in your inventory, then it will equip automatically. Now, as you can see in my inventory, I have gathered some copper ore and oak wood. Every crafting trade requires a certain crafting station and tool. I'll put a link to a quick overview into the video description, but it's really quite intuitive. For example, for blacksmithing, you need an anvil. And when I right-click it, then you can see the list of items that I can craft. I'll take this mace. When I select an item, it shows me which resources I need, and as you can see, I cannot craft this item yet. Now, this is a general principle of the game. You do not craft finished items directly from gathered resources. Instead, you craft intermediate materials first, referred to as crafting material. In this case, metal ingots and lumber. For ingots, I right-click the furnace. You can either select a number or just click left to get the maximum number. Next I go to the workbench, which is used for woodworking to craft lumber. And now that I have the crafting materials that I need, I can craft the finished item. I'll go ahead and craft a few. Now when I view the item that I crafted, you can see that it increases my strength. This is an important feature of crafting. Crafted items can increase your stats. However, the second mace increases my wisdom. Each item has a range of attributes that it can enhance, and you can see them if you select this symbol in the top left corner. You can check the different items and types of armor for this, but I'll give an overview in the second part of the guide. At this point, just one more hint. For leatherworking you also use the workbench, but you have to manually select the tab Leatherworking. One last hint on how to use your equipment slots, because this can be a bit confusing. As you can see, there are 2 rows of slots. So for each possible part of equipment you can carry, there is an inside slot and an outside slot. Only the inside slot is active. The outside slot is a cosmetic slot that only changes the appearance of your character. So drag any armor that you want to use into the inside slot. And if you acquire any fancy equipment that you want to carry only for looks, then put that into the outside slot. So here's an example how this can be useful. In the general goods store you can buy a lantern, which you can use at night. Although I want to keep my shield, so I will not drag it into my right hand. Instead I drag it into the cosmetic slot. This way, although I visually carry the lantern, I effectively still carry my shield. And thus, for example, I can still do a shield bash. So, if you are a new player, then I recommend that you just jump into the game right now. Explore the area and get a feeling for everything. At this point there's really no need to get overloaded with information. In the following second part I'll give some more details, particularly about crafting. If you press T, you can see your progress in the various gathering and crafting skills. Let's have a closer look at that. Wood and metalworking skills are very useful. You can use them to make tools, weapons and armor. If you are an archer or magic user, you might consider cloth or leatherworking. They can enhance your dexterity or magic stats. And then there is alchemy. You can gather flowers like white bloom to make potions, for example to restore your health during a battle. Some items also require additional crafting materials like glass or string. And then there is cooking and collecting vegetables. Food can be used to replenish, but unlike magic potions it cannot be used during a fight. So that's one skill that I have never touched yet. But if you're interested, the wiki should be helpful. Crafting uses its own level system referred to as tiers. Materials that it can craft in the beginning are tier 1. Then every 8 crafting levels you will reach another tier. But note that you cannot craft higher tier items until you buy the corresponding recipes. I'll show that in a moment. So obviously around Brightwind you can gather and craft tier 1 materials. Tier 2 material spawns a bit further out and you can buy the recipes in 7 Oaks. Tier 3 spawns around 7 Oaks and you get the recipes in Florin City. And so on. Also the level of the monsters will gradually increase. So as you slowly level up, you get to explore more and more of the map. Now a short note on buying recipes. I'm in 7 Oaks now and I want to buy a recipe from the tailoring trainer.
Need help?
Trainers work like trading characters, so if you right-click an item in her inventory, then you buy the corresponding scroll. To use a scroll, right-click it. However, if I would right-click the scroll now, then I would sell it back to her.
Goodbye!
So before using the scroll, disengage the character. And now, when I approach the crafting station, the item has been added to the list of items that I can craft. By the way, you can travel to Ether Towns quickly and fast by using the Flight Master. In Brightwin you can find her next to the portal. However, you must visit the Flight Master in the destination town first to link them up.
Greetings!
So you see that I currently have no destinations. The first time I have to walk to Seven Oaks by foot.
What's on your mind?
But then, when I speak to the Flight Master, I get a flight connection between Brightwin and Seven Oaks.
Goodbye!
Of course, I can also get back to Brightwin using my portal. But from now on, when I want to go to Seven Oaks, I can just use the flight.
Need help? Time to rest.
Towns are resting areas. This is indicated by this symbol on the top left corner. When you exit the game in a resting area, then you acquire a resting bonus during the time you're logged off. To check your status, point the mouse at the level progress bar. The maximum value is 150%, which means you get 50% bonus on experience points that you acquire by fighting or gathering. Now, I haven't mentioned this before, if you press return, you can open your chat window, and the last two tabs are your fighting and crafting logs. All this happens in the background, so the only thing to really remember is try to be in a town when you leave the game.
A note about gravestones.
Until you reach level 10, you do not lose anything when you get killed. You simply respawn at the nearest graveyard, which is usually nearby a town. However, after level 10, your inventory gets sealed into your gravestone. To get it back, you have to go to the place where you died and right-click your gravestone. You don't need any tools. However, consider that other players can also loot your gravestone. So don't take valuable equipment into dangerous places.
The crumbs shop.
My last hint is about the crumbs shop. Tale of Toast is a free-to-play game, but there is an in-game shop where you can buy items for real-world money. Press P to enter the shop. There are various cosmetic items that you can buy, as well as scrolls, for example to reset your stats and skills after you reach level 10. The currency are crumbs, which you can buy over your Steam account. Scrolls appear directly in your inventory. However, cosmetic items are transferred to your bread box, which you can open by pressing U. The bread box is sort of a global inventory that you can use on all of your characters. To use them, drag items directly into your gear slots. There's a lot more to this game, of course, than I could show in this guide, but I hope that it's helpful for your first steps into the game. Bear in mind that Tale of Toast is designed for a long ongoing gameplay, and reaching high level content will be a long journey. So take your time and have fun.